In this episode, we're going to discuss how a nonprofit, that's right, a nonprofit pharmaceutical company is addressing drug shortages. We discuss Civica Rx. It focuses on cost plus pricing, sterile generics, and biosimilars. Martin, who was the president emeritus of Civica Rx, and how he joined a nonprofit pharma company. How about how he works with ANDAs, or abbreviated new drug applications? How do you manage ANDA filing volume? What problem was Civica Rx actually solving? Are they actually doing a good job? Is Civica Rx a broker or a manufacturer? How does Civica actually determine its margins? What kind of financial transparency does it offer its members? Why do they have members as opposed to, say, customers? What issues are they resolving with EpiPens? How will retail companies like CVS play a role in Civica's future? How did the FDA respond when Civica decided to add prices on labels? And finally, what are the closing thoughts? Our guest is going to be Martin Van Trieste. He's the president emeritus of Civica Rx. Let's get into it.
Let's discuss the behemoth in the room, if you will, a non-profit pharmaceutical company, because that makes no sense. Isn't the entire point of being a pharmaceutical company making a profit? So let's start with how did you get that phone call, and why did you decide to take the phone call seriously?
If you like this type of content, please like, subscribe, share. It really helps the channel.
So I picked up the phone, and there's this gentleman on the phone named Dan Lillyquist. He's the chief strategy officer for Intermountain Healthcare. And so he came to me and had this idea about starting a nonprofit pharmaceutical company. And it kind of was an interesting concept, and I thought it was appealing.
Were you guys working with ANDAs, abbreviated new drug applications, or were you working as a compounding pharmacy effectively?
All ANDA products. No, we didn't do any compounding, and still do not do any compounding at Civic.
How many ANDAs did you have to file? That sounds like a lot.
So the way Civica started was we went to the individuals who already had the ANDAs, who had stopped producing the product because it was financially unsuccessful for them. Civica has now built a plant in Petersburg, West Virginia, that could probably make about $200 million doses of either a vial, a syringe, a cartridge in the plant in Petersburg. And they plan to have 80 ANDAs that Civic owns and produces in their own plant. And that process has been going on where they're making filings, probably 3 filings a month at this point in time.
How does Civica manage the volume that's required for the testing and the prep to file 3 ANDAs a month?
So it's a combination of contract laboratories and Civica laboratories. But Civica has their own R&D organization.
Let's focus on the R&D part of this for a second. The formulations associated with this must be really, really hard to do, especially at scale.
I mean, you're copying the formulation of someone who's already developed it, right?
Right.
So a lot of the kinks have been worked out. There's not a lot of secrets in how a generic drug is made, right? There's just not, especially the ones that Civica focuses on. Now, remember, the drugs that are in shortage have become economically unviable, right? Those drugs are some of the oldest generic drugs in the marketplace, right? I mean, morphine injections over 100 years old. So you're basically copying. I don't want to diminish the work that our R&D organization is, but it's a development project, not a research project, right?
There are 2 things that are not making sense in my head. The first one is, what problem are we solving? Is it we have at least 4 health systems that need drugs and we want to make sure that we supply it, or we want to supply the entire country with drugs on shortage, or anywhere in the world, drugs on shortage, we can do it now because we have the systems to do it. And you take all of that, and that's a huge enough problem to solve by itself. Walk me through the thought process of how the goal was initially defined and how you kind of land up on the other side.
So the goal was we're going to go after drug shortages, sterile products, so it's manageable, and we're only going to focus inside the US. anyone who wants to buy it, but first they have to become a member. As we've decided as a nonprofit, we will not take money from an investor, and we're not going to have stock in the company. So we owe nothing to no one, right? So there's no pressure on the company to perform in some financial way on a quarter-by-quarter basis, right? Because that's how people get into this drug shortage issue in the first place. Part of it was the guaranteed contracts, not just a guaranteed contract to the manufacturer and the supplier, but a guaranteed contract from our members.
What I'm hearing, that the initial model was Civica was effectively a broker, because you were not manufacturing and you were not the buyer. You were basically connecting those two groups of people. Obviously, that model's changed now. But at that moment when you started, from a pure capitalization perspective, it was you're brokering the two relationships. Is that fair?
Basically, I would look at a Civica as a manufacturer,
Okay.
as a pharma company who manufactures. We have a manufacturer. Civica had a manufacturing license from day one. And it wasn't just a broker in sense of you give me the order, I go get it, I go get you the product. Civica took ownership of the product.
Sure.
Right. So we took ownership. We kept it in our facilities. We were liable for the product sitting in the warehouse if it were to burn up and go away.
Absolutely.
We're liable for that. And at the same time, right, we're generating ANDAs.
Sure.
And building our manufacturing plant.
So you were paying for the inventory, you were paying for the insurance that go along with it, you were paying for salaries. How do you decide what is the margins you keep so that you're adjusting for these?
So it's a cost plus model.
Okay. Right.
We pretty much decided when we started this business, we need an operating margin about 18 to 20% to make it self-sustaining.
How transparent are you with your finances, with your members? And the reason I ask that question is, theoretically, is it possible that Civica will go in 2 years? You know what? We think that the future is in addressing not just injectables, but transdermals, and we need to capitalize another plant. We want another injection of cash from all of you guys.
The Civica board of directors is consisted of 7 health systems and 3 philanthropic organizations. Philanthropic organizations keep us honest to the mission. Health systems, so they have to approve any divergence from the original business model, which they have done. So Civica is going to produce biosimilar insulin. How that all happened was a group of philanthropists came to us and said, you know what? We need someone to make a biosimilar insulin.
EpiPens becomes the next question. I want to go, well, that was a big issue. Again, a cost issue. It was a formulation issue, which raises a question. Number one, how do you address the fact that when you get into insulins, it's about the pens. Therefore, it's about the patents on the medical device, because it becomes a combination product around the pens, and the fact that a lot of the large pharma companies are going, we're guaranteeing you no more than $30, I think is one of them. One of them came out and said. So how do you address those two questions?
So a couple things. One, Civica does not need to manufacture product. That's not our goal. Our goal is to solve problems.
Right.
So if everybody lowers the price of Novolog, Humalog, and Glargine to $30, just us having the approved BLAs, and that makes it happen, I'm okay. It's not $30 for everybody. And so they use that, they say that, and I give them kudos for what they've done, but it's not $30 for everybody. You go in and you're paying cash, you're not paying $30.
From your experience, based on the fact that Civica just pivoted into addressing retail questions, do you see the board now expanding to include a Rite Aid or a CVS, or, well, I don't know if Rite Aid is going to exist at some point, but CVS and Duane Reade or whatever it is, because they become your new customers, right?
Yeah.
So how does that affect Civica?
We've decided I don't think a membership model works in the retail space just because of the way everything's distributed, moved around. But the maximum suggested retail price is on the label. And so, and we're gonna and Civica will publish that. So it's gonna be very available. That's the maximum price. And so hopefully through education and communication, people with diabetes would know what the demand when they go in there.
How did the FDA react to you going, we're going to change our label to include a price on it? Because I don't think we've seen that, have we?
It's not illegal.
No, and it's not. But I've just never seen anyone do it.
And basically, the FDA said, we support what you're doing. We can't do anything special for you.
Of course.
Right?
Drug companies have to exist by making a profit. And just to be clear, and I want to say this, these are not your words, these are mine. I think brand drug companies serve a really important function and a purpose, and there's a goal, and I'm glad they exist because, quite honestly, other people aren't doing the research. But drug shortages are a real problem, and I'm glad there's someone out there who's addressing those questions. So thank you to you guys doing it.
There are basically two pharmaceutical industries.
Yeah.
The branded companies, and there are problems associated with that model that we should talk about.
Absolutely.
But the generic drug industry, which has a different set of issues, which we didn't even touch on the issues in the generic drug industry, which are important issues to discuss, to understand how they operate.
This was incredible. And Martin, thank you again for doing this. And I can't wait to continue the conversation, but thank you.
You're welcome. And I enjoyed doing it. Hopefully people enjoy listening to it.
Call, click,